So, welcome to the Agile Metrics podcast, your gateway to the dynamic world of agile development. I'm thrilled to be your host, Tammy, and today we have a truly electrifying episode lined up for you. Yes. So, joining us today is none other than Neil Killick, a trailblazing agile coach, a trainer, and a consultant with a knack for challenging the status quo. Now, Neil brings with him a wealth of experience and expertise. And today, along with Nick, we're diving headfirst into the fascinating realm of the NoEstimates movement. So get ready, buckle up for a rollercoaster ride of insights, of revelations, and thought-provoking discussions as we explore the implications of this idea in the agile space. Who knows, it might impact on your work today. So grab your notepad, strap in, and get ready to challenge the norms as we embark on this thrilling journey with Nick on the Agile Metrics podcast. So stay tuned. So hi, Neil. How are you doing today?
Very good, very good.
Okay, so introduce yourself to us. Tell us, who is Neil Killick?
Well, nowadays, I guess I mostly ply my trade as an independent consultant in the product space. So product coaching and consulting, and I suppose general software development uplift, if you'd like to call it. I suppose I used to call what I do agile coaching. I don't tend to do it so much nowadays because of the sort of baggage with the term. But I suppose you could describe my approach as a small A agile, and I've been in the capital A agile world. I mean, from before the manifesto. I mean, I started developing software commercially in the late 90s. So I was a pre-manifesto agilist, if you like. Sort of I did get involved in the sort of agile space later on, but I think in my early career, it wasn't really a thing, just kind of got on and was learning my trade as a programmer, and then moved into, doing that for like 15 years. I may make it sound like I was just doing that briefly, but 15 years of programming, and then moved more into product management, and then also sort of dabbled in project management, portfolio management, engineering leadership, product leadership, being a bit sort of, all over the place across the gamut of software development roles. I started my career as a consultant, and I've spent a lot of my career as a consultant. I've also had permanent roles as well, where I've actually sort of taken ownership of products and getting products to market and evolving them, et cetera. But it's been a mixed bag as a career. But I suppose that my where I most naturally sit is in that space of helping people improve the way they do software development, whether that be from an executive leadership perspective in terms of embracing it in their company and how to do it better, or actually working with teams and helping them, and everything in between, really, and helping other non-software teams as well, and just helping people work better across the business, I suppose, in ways that are more conducive to the world we're in now, the VUCA world, as it's called.
Yeah,
where it's just day by day things change in our market and in our internal environment. And we've got to find ways to sort of create some consistency and predictability in that. And that's what I suppose has always fascinated me about the estimation topic, because I think it's something that touches the hearts of everyone involved in software, because everyone has either been asked to provide estimates or is the requester of estimates.
True.
And there's a lot of dysfunction and confusion and even anger around the way things are done sometimes. So it's a fascinating topic. And I think this is why it kind of comes around. Honestly, it kind of makes me laugh because, I think when the manifesto first came out, it was probably in some part a little bit of a reaction to the way, the estimate-driven ways of working. Yeah. And then about 10 or 11 years after that, 2012 is when the hashtag NoEstimates stuff came out. And now sort of, we're like 10, 12 years on from that. And it's kind of, I'm suddenly seeing the estimation stuff as doing the rounds again. It seems to be a sort of 10 to 12 year cycle
Yeah.
So it's quite predictable, ironically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a quick question here. Now, you mentioned you had actually started doing Agile before the manifesto. So tell us, because the manifesto for a lot of people, for some people assume that it was switched on at the manifesto, but you're telling me that actually you started before. So how was it then? What changed when the manifesto came on, and how is it now for you?
Yeah, so I mean, so I was, purely like a programmer back then, but we were called analyst programmers. So this kind of, I suppose, this division of functions like a business analyst, that wasn't really a thing, really.
Okay.
Then it was like, as a programmer, you were expected to be able to do analysis and to be able to talk with customers and work with customers. So actually, it's funny, like, whilst I sort of recognize when people talk about waterfall and sort of traditional software approaches, whilst I recognize that from definitely when we launched projects, that was the way it was done.
Yeah.
In terms of the day-to-day work, I mean, I work daily with customers, like as a programmer, and not just because I was a consultant, the customer of the software that you're building, the users and the customers, like, feedback loops, and adapting what you were doing to suit, the changing needs. It was kind of, sometimes it's made out nowadays that, there was this complete inflexibility, everything just had to be done to the plan. Well, yes, in not very good organizations, but when you're working with smart people who know what they're doing, we sort of just naturally work in a small a agile way, because it kind of makes sense, right? Of course, you're going to adapt to changing needs and surroundings. We do that in our daily lives, on a daily.
True.
So it's like it's really just applying the way we think and the way we do things in life in our organizations, and not just not being not letting something that has been, just because something's been written down or supposedly put in concrete, sort of not letting that dictate how we do things. If there is a need to make changes and do things in a different way, or to change our goal or whatever it might be, I always felt like I had that flexibility as a programmer. Ironically, I think that has now changed, and it's gone the opposite direction due to the industrialization of Agile. I call it the Agile theater, the Agile industrial complex. The Agile is unrecognizable from what it was intended to be. I don't think it's any coincidence that all of the authors have distanced themselves from what Agile is now. None of them are involved in the stuff that gets put out in terms of the frameworks and everything else. And it's not surprising to me, because the essence of what it was all about is completely lost. So I guess that's always been. But like I say, I don't even like to sort of talk about Agile per se. I always want to talk about what are the problems we're trying to solve? What are we trying to achieve? Yeah. Let's get into the detail and be precise about what we want to do. Let's not use terms like Agile and even Scrum, or even sort of things about Scrum or things about Agile. Let's not even talk about those things. Let's talk about the work and what we're trying to accomplish, and the specifics of the things we're doing. And be mindful about that, and just use critical thinking. Critical thinking is I think it gets harder, the more that we split into sort of very, very thin functions. It gets really hard to critically think, because you can't impact the end result. You can only just do your work. And so even if you are a good critical thinker, you don't get the opportunity to do it in your organization, because you're just, So anyway, look, I'm waffling. So you've opened a hornet's nest. I haven't done one of these in a long time, so now it's suddenly
coming all out. No, but I get what you're saying, because in my experience as a consultant, I realized that also in some places that you go, you throw names about and people build up walls. So you just go to, what do you need to do? What's the problem? Who do we work with? How do you work well together? In fact, in one of my previous roles, I kept on using the term, you have a tool belt. This Agile thing can be your spanner. It's what we get it to do that really matters, because
Yeah.
obviously not to downplay, but they super intelligent guys. They're used to words being thrown at them, but it was more like, let's get to work. Let's not spend our heads in the theory. Let's just get to work.
Exactly. Love that. Let's get to work. Let's do what we need to do. Exactly.
Okay. So in deeper into the honest nest, now like I said in the intro, we're talking about the no estimates movement. Now, I don't know if our listeners know this, but on Neil's blog, right? There's a blog post that he put in 2012 or 2013 about no estimates. So he's been on this for a while. So let's hear from Neil. So Neil, no estimates. Tell us about it.
Well, I actually got out of it quite a few years ago because it got so heated and ugly actually at times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few people on the, I guess, the anti no estimates brigade, if you like.
Okay.
That it got quite nasty at times, and I to the point where I was just like, I just wanted to get out of it, to be honest, because the thing was about it is that the way it all again, there was no like desire. People call it a movement, but there was never like a bunch of people got together and said, "Oh, let's start this no estimates movement." What happened was, I think it was Woody Zuel initially wrote a blog post about questioning whether we need estimates, and he in his company they didn't use them in his team, and so he was talking about his experiences and everything else and the problems that you can encounter with estimates. He wrote his blog and he tweeted the blog link, and he used the hashtag no estimates to kind of mean like as a starting of a conversation. Can we work with no estimates? It was kind of like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also around the same time, I was having conversations with a guy called Vasco Duarte, who's a Portuguese, I think he's Portuguese, or I hope that's right, consultant / software developer, like super smart guy.
Yeah.
And actually I was having a debate with him because I was defending story points and talking about how they were useful, and he was saying no, and we're going back and forth about this, and he actually challenged me to find out for myself by actually starting to measure throughput in my teams and actually compare throughput to story point. So I actually went away and I said, you know what, I don't agree with him, but I'm going to go and there's no harm in me
in trying
it. And actually I remember coming back to him, I can't remember how long after, but I actually remember tweeting him saying you were right. Like from actually going away and figuring this stuff out myself and thinking about it and everything else, I was like, you're spot on. So there was that going on. There was also another guy called Alan Holub, who was getting up on stage saying, we need to get rid of estimates right now. We need to stop estimating. So there was all these different angles of no estimates going on. I was just blogging as I was discovering and thinking. I suppose I just started dumping out my thoughts.
Yeah.
And so when I look back at some of the stuff I wrote then, it's like, on the one hand, some of it I'm like, I still stand by to this day. Other stuff I'm like, oh, that's very reactionary. It's it's visceral because I'm in it. It's a lot easier to when you step back and you just you can critically analyze. But when you're in it, and people are you're actually living that dysfunction. It's very different. So I was just doing that, and that was the thing. And where it kind of blew up was Ron Jeffries of XP fame and Agile Manifesto author started kind of debating with me about stuff, I guess borderline arguing about stuff. And that got picked up, and I ended up being invited to all these conferences around the world and to talk about it. It was really kind of crazy time.
Yeah.
But my position has always been, I'm someone who again, I'm a critical thinker. I like to see things from different sides. Like I try not to double down on a position because I'm always trying to learn more. And it's amazing how many times you think you've nailed something and then you discover some new information and you're like, oh my God, actually, I haven't nailed it at all. There's, there's a whole new world of stuff to learn about this. So, so I recognize myself in a lot of the sort of newer coaches and scrum masters out there who are saying the same kind of stuff I was saying, about story points and everything else. And, it's a journey that I suppose people have to go on. You can't, when you try and argue the point from a position of experience, it's impossible, right? So anyway, that was kind of how it all started. But like I said, it then started to almost become a thing. And honestly, when something becomes a thing, I almost know that it's time for me to get out of it, because it's like I don't want to be attached to a thing. So I was getting people saying to me, "You need to write a book. You need to write the No Estimates book." And actually, I started to write this book. It's probably still sitting. Actually, it is still sitting on my hard drive in my iBooks. I started to piece together this book, but then again, I was conflicted about it. Part of me was just too lazy to write a book. I don't know how people do it. It's amazing. But part of it was like just being conflicted in that I don't want to be in a position where I feel like I'm having to defend No Estimates because I have a book out about it.
Okay.
So I want to always be able to reject something if I figure out something is not something I agree with anymore. I want to be able to move on from it. So I made the decision to sort of not do that. Vasco did write the book, an excellent book, Woody's run No Estimates workshops. I think Vasco's run No Estimates workshops. I just never went down that path. Okay. Because I just didn't want to attach myself to it in that way. That doesn't mean that I don't still staunchly, believe in a lot of the stuff I was saying. It's just that I don't want to be attached to No Estimates movement. There's no move. The only movement I want to be involved in is that we're trying to get better at our craft, make a more humane and fulfilling, place for people to work and have careers. And, that's what I care about. And it's what I've always cared about, when I work with organizations, that's the place I come from. And again, if I attach myself to Agile, or I attach myself, and I've done this, by the way, I've gone through the mistakes of this, where you attach yourself to Scrum or you attach yourself to Agile, and then you make it all about that. And you get disappointed when people aren't doing the thing. You've got in your mind, people should be doing things in this way. And you get frustrated when they're not. And that's not what we're there for. Like, even if people tell us that's what they're hiring us for, that's not what we're there for. We're there to help people, help them achieve the goals that they have, and in a way that's going to suit their context. So that's what I'm about. And so like I say, I guess my name has been attached to No Estimates, has been attached to Agile, and I write about Agile a lot, and I wrote about No Estimates a lot, and it's fair enough. I'm not complaining about it, but that's kind of where we're at. But look, I'm very happy to talk about this, like you said, let's get to work, right? Let's talk about things underneath it. What's going on here? Like the estimates, the No Estimates. What is going on?
Because a question. So I'm thinking now that, because I get what you're saying, we are flowing on the same level, but I'm thinking it's possible I might have some listeners that are wondering, what are you talking about? What are estimates? What are story points? Do you want to go a bit into that? Then I also want to hear your thoughts, or for this question, if you walk into an organization today, I think I know what you would say, because I think we discussed it earlier. Like, if you walked into an organization and you met them doing estimates, if I know you, you'd be like, yeah, it worked for you, fine. But if I create a scenario where you walk into an organization and they said, Neil, we are going in this direction. Do we do this or do we not do this? So I read a book, and so guys talked about, I read Ron Jeffries' blog post about estimation and story points, and I think it's really good, but I'm not sure, and you are the expert. Should we do estimates, or should we just use proper metrics? Should we use throughput and cycle time and all that? What will you tell the person?
So, and this is the thing, right? When we how would I describe this with estimate? And this, I don't mean this by what you're saying, but in terms of as an industry, I think what we do with estimation is quite low resolution thinking. We don't we tend to sort of make these kind of black and white. We create these dichotomies of things that don't exist. Should we estimate or not estimate? Should we forecast or estimate? For me, it's never just there's one answer to that question. But it's funny, you mentioned about what would I do if I go into an organization, and this actually happened to me where I got hired into an organization, and this team was very excited that I'd come in. So like, oh my God, this is the NoEstimates guy. He's going to help us stop estimating. And they were very disappointed when they, it was said, right, how do we stop estimating? I said, what do you mean? Why do you want to stop estimating? They're like, what do you mean? Aren't you the NoEstimates guy? I said, yeah, but we need to figure out what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? And actually, when we started to discuss it, I said, oh, we don't want to waste time with this. I say, okay, how long do you spend estimating? Turned out they spent like 20 minutes at the beginning of the project estimate. I was like, what do you mean? So what do you mean waste time? You spent 20 minutes. Why is that? So this is what, this is what I mean by attaching yourself to something. It's like, I don't have some kind of formula that I'm just going to go, oh yeah, that's the answer. It's like, yeah. And in fact, part of my whole argument with the NoEstimates thing or estimation stuff was that we put way too much thought and emphasis on it. Like we spend too much time talking about it, actually. So it's like, we spend more time talking about it than we actually do it. It's like it's actually ridiculous. So what I actually again try and do is let's start from a position of what are the challenges we have, what are the pain points we have, and and genuinely and not just accept when people say, oh, our pain point is that we spend too long estimating. It's like, because no, we have to understand how does that cause you individually pain? Yeah. So, and I'm not talking about, oh, I have to sit for an hour in an estimation session at the beginning of the project. I mean, that's not pain, right? What is the ongoing pain that is being caused by something you're doing? And the estimation actually is a red herring, right? This is the thing. It's like the truly effective teams and organizations that I've worked with spend very, very little time talking about estimation. So this is more the point, is that it's like, to get really, really good at product development, actually these kind of like processy things become less and less relevant. Yeah, like we just don't talk about them. So you know what? Like, this is the thing. There might be some issues with story points, maybe, in terms of how they're applied. There are issues, just like there are issues with any kind of estimate that you provide. Even if you put aside the dysfunctions around estimates becoming commitments, which is a massive problem. Even if you put that aside, and we're in a healthy organization, estimates are estimates, like they're problematic because of the nature of estimates being that they're estimates, but yet we're working in environments where we have real constraints around time and money and customers wanting things in certain times and their own constraints. And so, this becomes a problem when we're making estimates. And then it's like, well, okay, I understand it's an estimate, but like, this has taken twice as long as you said it would. I understand we're not committing to things, but like, how is this useful? So it's like, so there are so I guess if I was to sort of categorize, I suppose what NoEstimates is to me, or what the conversation should be. Yeah, it's one is about I suppose, let's try and eliminate the dysfunctions of estimation in terms of how it's typically done. Okay. Like, so there are organizations or teams that do estimation well, if you like. And by that, I don't mean that they're more accurate. I mean that they have probabilistic ways of doing things. They it's not a big deal. They have good reference data. They know how to project uncertainty and variance and this kind of stuff. So they have a handle on uncertainty and how to deal with it. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean that they are better at estimating in terms of size and more accurate. So there's dysfunctions around the way estimation is typically done in organizations. And then the other part of it is more, I think what I've been saying is that these kind of traditional questions that we ask teams and individuals for estimates, it's almost irrelevant in modern effective product development. So, I call it empirical product development, like the most obvious, or most famous example of that is Scrum. Well, it should be the empiricism from Scrum, the Scrum theory that no one talks about other than like Scrum
trainers.
Really, really know what they're talking about. Empiricism. So product development for me, it has to be done in an empirical way, regardless of whether you use Scrum or not. Empiricism is like crucial. So the sort of, and I categorize, I suppose, the two different types of predictability, right? So there's the predictability that we try and get from estimation, which I would call deterministic,
predictability.
Estimation. Deterministic predictability. Yes. That's, it's like, how much will this cost? How long will this take? Right? We don't know the answer, and we're trying to predict how long these things will take or how much it will cost. Whereas empirical predictability, should I say, is actually using real constraints like time and money, and saying, okay, we want to produce a result for this constraint, and so we're going to create predictability by doing things in short cycles, measuring our progress towards our goals, incorporating feedback, and then rinse and repeat. And because we're doing things in predictable cycles, it's predictable. Like we know when we're going to release software. We know how much money we've got. We know how much time we've got. And so actually the only unpredictable piece of it is what we're actually going to create or deliver. Whereas in deterministic predictability, kind of everything is unpredictable. Like the scope is unpredictable, the time is unpredictable, the cost is unpredictable. Well, when I say unpredictable, we can predict it. Like we can estimate it, forecast it, whatever you want to call it. But we don't know the answer. We're just kind of making a prediction. Whereas with empirical predictability, we know the answer in terms of like how much money we've got and how long we're going to spend on a thing. And this is why, like fixed time iterations and cycles of value creation are really, really helpful, because we are, it's meaning that we're fixing things that otherwise would be unpredictable. So that's a really useful. Well, for me, it's absolutely essential that we work in that way if we are in the pursuit of value creation. If maximizing value is our goal, and Scrum, the purpose of Scrum really is to create and maximize value, in a product or a service or something along those lines. If that's our goal, I don't see any other way we could do that other than using empirical process and using empirical prediction. This is why Scrum Guide says things like what will happen is unknown. Like we're in a complex environment, so we shouldn't be making predictions. This is why Scrum and XP use yesterday's weather when they do. If we do have to make a forecast, we use yesterday's weather. But really, it's kind of trying to lead you away from it. It's trying to say, look, don't spend your time worrying about that. Spend your time worrying about what's valuable and how do we maximize that value for the time, capacity, money we have. So let's fix our team. Let's have fixed iterations. Let's create predictability here, so that we can optimize for value and not worry about the other things so much.
Yeah.
That's basically the sort of angle I'm coming from.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think when you're saying, one thing that came to my mind was, the deterministic is kind of like trying to build a castle in midair. It's not picking anything. It's just your measure of your understanding of what's happening around you. Whereas
Yeah.
the other version is baked in reality, because we're looking at, okay, we built the foundation in 2 weeks. We can build this in a month based on how we work, what we have in front of us, and level of complexity that we have. Whereas the other is just like, so how long did it take to build a sandcastle in the air? 2 weeks. Okay, let's go with that. That kind of thing. So,
that's right. And it's very easy to say, well, story points are supposed to obfuscate time. But the problem is that most agile teams, and you'll see me do this a lot when I talk about it, cross-functional teams that are supposedly in an agile environment, blah, 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 they're actually working in functional silos.
Yes.
There'll be a tester, there'll be a programmer, there'll be a designer. And yet, so even with story points, if we read between the lines, even though we're using numbers that aren't time to make an estimate, what each individual is going to look at things in a different way. They're going to look at their own work. They can't possibly know the work that the other individuals are doing. So again, the way that Scrum combats this, it says, no, we leave our titles at the door. We are one team. We work together. So if you are truly working as a team, you do understand what it takes as a team to create value, and therefore you become more predictable. So we try and apply this newer fangled estimation technique, but really we're still working in a way that is not conducive
for that kind of estimation. Yeah.
So like it's, so again, the forecasting side of it, or the capacity and forecasting side of it, for me, it's just very, very simple. Just measure your throughput. Even if you're using story points, start measuring your throughput if you're not already doing so. And in 6 sprints time, I can almost guarantee, because every team that I've ever looked at their data backs this up. I look at their throughput. I look at the what's called the coefficient of variance, where it's basically your standard deviation divided by your average.
Yeah.
And then you do that for story points, and you do it for the throughput. The throughut is more predictable. I've never seen it not be. Over a sufficient period of time, and that only needs to be six sprints. So therefore, that straight away tells you, in terms of our team capacity, in terms of how many stories we should bring in, we should actually, it's more predictable if we use our story count than we use our story
using the points.
That's easily fixed. Like it's like, people can say, oh, but blah blah blah. It's like, but okay, if you want to get better results, you want to be more predictable, you can literally fix predictability. This is the thing. I've gone into teams and they go, and I've been told, oh, we want our team to be more predictable. I'll go and spend half an hour with them, go back to the manager and say, yeah, I've made them more predictable. You'll go, what are you talking about? You've only been here half an hour. It's like, but this is literally another tactic, by the way, is to just cut the backlog in half as well. That also reduces your lead time, and there's all these little tricks. But at the end of the day, it's no one is stopping. And this is the thing: I'm never going to come in somewhere and go, you should stop using story points, regardless of whether I think. Because the point is, you know what? I had to go through the journey of learning. And you know what? When I learned about them, it was a revelation. It was amazing. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, I think it was called jelly beans when I learned about it. It was, oh God, I forgot the guy's name is Jim Coplian. One of the original, he wasn't one of the manifesto authors, but he was one of the original. He was doing Scrum manifesto, one of the original guys. And I did his product owner class years ago. He calls them, he didn't even call them points, he called them jelly beans, right? It doesn't matter, right? It's the same thing, right? It's just a number.
Random number.
I was blown away. It's like, wow, and relative estimation, it makes so much sense. Like all of this stuff. And it does actually, like, if you're just looking at it just conceptually, it makes so much sense, particularly again, in a world where you've broken up your deliverables into small pieces. It makes a lot of sense to do this relative estimate. So I'm not going to go and tell someone, no, skip over the 10 years of experience and go straight to doing these things. Much easier to go, well, you know what? If you're interested, I can introduce you to some metrics you can start measuring alongside what you're already doing. There's no, this is what's the beauty of, the Kanban metrics, the flow metrics. The beauty of them is you don't have to change anything. You can just start measuring stuff and see if it helps you.
Yeah.
So that's great. So again, that side of it is less interesting to me. The estimation side of it is less interesting to me. Vasco is more about that side of it. He was all about, this is why story point data is pointless. We shouldn't be doing this. He was all about the forecasting stuff. I'm not. I'm like, that's, I agree, but that's not the most important part for me. Most important part for me is the fact that we're focusing on the wrong things. We're starting off endeavors, like a new initiative. The first thing we do is get in a room for an estimation session.
Is that a medium? Is it a large?
It's like, how we haven't even started exploring. We don't even know what the top level statement is of this endeavor, and we're going to come out of a room in a couple of hours' time with an estimate. Like what? Like it's craziness, right? And I think one of the places that I worked at early in my career was Seek, and I remember being really actually blown away at how, because I'd heard they were one of the sort of pioneering Agile organizations in Melbourne.
Okay.
And actually I was blown away by, if they've got a new initiative, it's like, right, okay, within the next week, we're going to get all of the key stakeholders together in a room, and we're going to have like a week-long inception, as they called it, where we're going to explore this initiative, the problem we're solving. We're going to slice. We're going to look at what our constraints are and where we have wiggle room. We're going to look at who our stakeholders are. We're going to look at what risks we have. What are our assumptions? We're going to do all these kind of things, right? The real work, the real work of risk reduction and empirical product development, figuring out what it is that we're trying to do and the value we're trying to create, rather than turning it into a conversation about the solution we're implementing and how long that thing is going to take. It's mind-boggling, and what is even more mind-boggling, is that I'll go into, I'll come into these organizations. They'll say, come to a sprint planning meeting. We'd love to get your feedback. I'll go to the sprint planning meeting, and I'll come out of it going, I didn't see any planning. I don't even know what it is you're doing. Because it was just, all it was conversations about ticket numbers, and then applying story point estimates to ticket numbers, and then those being dragged into a sprint somehow, and then that was it. I was like, this isn't planning. And like, even like companies that, often, for example, Scrum gets criticized, or, people will say, Scrum is so prescriptive, and, but the thing is, the reality is, I've never in my 28 years of software development encountered a team that's really doing Scrum. Honestly, that is honestly doing Scrum as described in the Scrum guide. There is always like, variations on things that have been taken out, moved, changed, whatever. So I don't know who thinks people are prescribing things to it. No one is doing what is prescribed. And actually, ironically, if people did do what the Scrum guide said, they're going to get much better results than what they're currently doing in the name of Scrum. So, and look, and Scrum, I think Scrum has jumped the shark in a lot of ways, particularly with the whole, quadruple your productivity in half the time nonsense. So that's all that. But the essence of Scrum as an empirical product development, really, the really good companies that are being successful and are essentially doing what Scrum is about. They're not calling it Scrum. They're not using the roles or the mechanics of it. They're not calling Scrum, but they're essentially doing that. They're using feedback cycles. They're prioritizing by value. They're not committing to work. Committing to work beyond a few weeks. They're not, most companies I go into, their backlog is essentially a committed list of work that can be years in size. Years, like, and you're going and they're going, oh, we're agile and blah blah blah, and I'm like, but you've got a backlog here that, based on your current throughput, would take you 12 years to deliver. It's like where is the agility? And it's like, and that's fine if that's but let's all be honest with ourselves. It's like, if and I have this conversation with executives all the time. If you want to be in an environment where you can schedule work, and that work gets delivered in the order that you schedule it in, you can do that. But realize that there is a cost to that. And what you can't do is what you're currently doing, which is where you're scheduling work, but then also coming to teams and injecting things in, and putting things above other things which have been committed often to actual paying customers. But then going, so then all of these expectations of when things are getting delivered, the execs don't even realize, and it's getting pushed out and out and out and out and out. So it's like, you've got to decide what kind of operation you want. Now it's if you want to have some semblance of agility, you cannot have teams committing to work months of work in advance. So you've got to, this is the again, you've got to have the experience to be able to have those conversations, because the sort of newer coaches and consultants are just there to install Agile. They're there to make sure the teams are doing stand-ups correctly. And this is what, when I see on LinkedIn, sorry, this has turned into a bit of a rant, but
it's fine.
I'm enjoying this. I'm going to go flow with it. When I see on LinkedIn, and people are posting about, like, the stand-up, is it okay if it goes longer than 15 minutes? I'm like, but like, who cares? I mean, honestly, are we seriously spending our expensive, we get paid well. Are we seriously spending our hours and days arguing over things like this? So I call these the sort of, the process stuff. Like, it's like what we should be, and this is why I love slicing, right? Because it's talking about the work, it's about talking about the value, it's talking about customers, it's talking about what they want to achieve, all those kind of things. And also, but it's also practical, and it ends up in a meaningful result. So that, honestly, what I'd love for your listeners to get from all this is, like, it's not about whether we estimate or don't estimate. Sometimes we need to make an ROI decision, and or there's like there's a cost of delaying something, and we need to make sure that we sequence things in the right way. There are times when we have to do it, particularly in larger organizations where there is competing demands for capacity and everything else, right? We've got to use, like, portfolio management techniques and what have you. But again, even SAFe. Now, I'm as far from a SAFe fan as possible. In fact, back around that time frame, I wrote a blog post called "The Horror of the Scaled Agile Framework." and actually, the funny story, I got invited to a conference, Agile conference, and Dean Leffingwell, the creator of SAFe.
Oh my God.
He hadn't read my blog post.
Okay.
But he was like, he came to my talk, and he was sat in the front of my talk. He said, "This is really good, blah, 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 blah." But at the time, if you Googled Scaled Agile Framework, my blog was the #1 result. So it's like it was just when he got home from Singapore, and I think realized that I never heard from him again, but because he invited me to do a guest blog. But anyway, so I digress. I'm not a fan of SAFe, but for example, what SAFe talks about with epics actually is actually useful, because it talks about the concept of an epic shouldn't be something that's as time bound. It should actually be that you've got a bunch of epics you prioritize those by value, and in SAFe it's WSJF. Again, we can put aside our feelings about that, but you're prioritizing by value. So we pick the epics we're going to work on. Then at the end of the, say, quarter, we don't go, oh, is this epic finished? We go, what's the next most valuable epics to work on? Have we delivered enough value in this epic? Should we start delivering more value in this epic? So it's always based on a value conversation, not on we finished all the stories in this epic, which is how most people interpret epics. So again, even SAFe gets it. If you actually go and read the good lean software development stuff in SAFe, it's actually good. Again, I'm not saying that you should install SAFe, and far from it, but there is some good theory underpinning it. So that's kind of I suppose that's kind of where I sit with that stuff.
The funny thing, when you're talking, a thought came to my mind. I'm sure you definitely know about Shuhari, right? And that's what came to my mind. I was like, I think what's happened, and I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about, the industry, that what's happened is some people have come in, which is, all well, good to them, the more the merrier. They've come in and held on to these fundamentals without understanding the spirit behind it, which actually what gave birth to this podcast that I started, the Agile Metrics podcast, because I was like, and the idea behind the Agile Metrics is all these tools and techniques are like in your tool belt. You look at the context you are in and see what you can apply. And like, I had a podcast episode with one professional Scrum trainer, and he said something really instrumental. He said, when you come to an organization, you have to realize that the organization has spent years building to where they are. So you have to come as a coach. You can't come in there and say, this you're doing, throw it away. No, that's what led them to where they are. That's what's made them survive so far. So like you said about, if you get there and they're doing estimation, you don't go there and say, oh, no, you go, that's okay. You do that. That works for you. Let's add something. And like in the hard stage, you gather, right? You gather different techniques and you see what works for either your personality type, the context you're in, and then you determine, okay, I won't say your go-to, but you're more comfortable, or you found this to be more useful. But it doesn't mean you throw away the others.
Yeah.
You just
of course. No, 100%. And we also have to be mindful that we're in a commercial setting. Yeah. And at the end of the day, what's important is that we're helping the business be successful. Yeah. And I think sometimes we get caught up in that we're helping the team. And yes, we are in one respect, but what we're actually trying to do is to help the team become more, have more of an input into the commercial success of the business, really. And I think actually this is part of the estimation issue in terms of what happens is the people who are asking the teams to make estimates or making estimates themselves don't really have skin in the game. If you're a middle manager, it's not your money you're spending.
Yeah, true.
So actually, and this was one of the things, one of the when the whole NoEstimates debate was going on, there was this one guy who was coming at things from a really, really experienced program management perspective. And the one thing he'd always talk about was he'd say that program management is, it's about you're spending other people's money. So we need to act like adults, right? And sometimes we don't act like adults who are spending other people's money. Sometimes so what I see is this awful waste of money. And this isn't just because the teams are giving bad estimates. Yeah. This willingness to plunge millions of dollars into pursuits that are not generating the success that is needed for that investment, but no one knows that. No one can even answer what was supposed to be the return on this investment. No one can answer that question. Yeah. In terms of the people who are doing the work. So I'm lucky in that, like I say, I've because I've sort of worked, in the sort of senior level, executive level, but also as programmer and everything in between. I've got that sort of empathy and appreciation for, the sort of commercial outcomes we're trying to achieve, and I'm lucky as well that I've worked at startups and some very early stage startups and some a bit further along. But when you're at a startup, all that matters is your runway and and making sure you are damn well sure that you're doing the right things, and that mentality about always caring about the time and the cash, so that we can find ways to either get to market faster or to test ideas faster, to not over invest in features that are not going to work, whatever it might be. Like, that mentality is actually what's needed everywhere, but actually you only see it at the very early stage startups. Even the startups that are sort of more established, they sort of get a bit of a complacency about them. It's like, oh, we got a bit of money behind us. I mean, I worked in one startup that was really plowing through money, and again, not working in a way where we're learning and getting feedback, and you're just going, oh my God, this is, it's going to be a failure, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. So, again, I would urge people, whether it be coaches or developers or project managers, whatever role you're in, to appreciate that, hey, let's find out what is the commercial outcome of what we're trying to accomplish, because then I can use that and work backwards.
Because at
the end of the day, I might think I'm going to be rewarded and praised for delivering the thing, but if I deliver the thing and it's a failure, and I've seen this so many times, and actually one CEO I went to, who brought me in, I said, why? He said, we want to be more agile. I said, why? Why do you want to be more agile? What? And he said, because we just spent 8 months building a feature that no one wants.
Ooh.
And we can't afford to do that. And I was like, this is exactly the kind of answer that is we can work with that, because now it's like, okay, you now have an outcome, a sort of operational outcome, that you want to have faster cycles of getting things to market, which necessitates us being more
agile,
expedient and agile, and all these kind of things. So let's stop putting so much emphasis on implementation, solution, output, how long that takes, and instead spend a little, you can get in a room for an hour and workshop your options and actually save months of development work, rather than come out and go, oh, we've got an estimate. We spent 2 hours doing an estimate. Spend that 2 hours doing a capability map, doing a Wardley map, or doing an impact map, and actually starting to understand your landscape and figure out where is the best way for us to spend our time. And then don't do that once, come back regularly. Use your review cycles, use your iterations as real iterations to actually iterate on the problem you're trying to solve. Look at, are we solving for the right segment, customer segment? Is the job that we're solving the best one, the most important one to them right now? Is the channel that we're delivering on the best channel to be delivering on? Constantly asking ourselves those questions is way, way more valuable. And we spend no time doing that. Barely any time doing that. Even the organizations that you think are good, they're in the sort of top 10%. They're not spending enough time talking about it either. And you know what, ironically, it's often because Agilists say, well, we shouldn't be spending time up front. We shouldn't be doing, and it's like, well, hang on a minute. But if we don't spend time up front, and by the way, I'm not saying here that we should go off and do a 3-month analysis. I'm saying
I know what you mean.
Get in a room and figure out what we're doing. Because otherwise, you know what, iterative and incremental is actually meaningless if we don't know what we're incrementing
to.
It's like, it's actually meaningless to say we're doing iterative and incremental development, not having a clear goal that you're progressing to. It's meaningless. You spend the time up front and then continuously and doing just enough and all that kind of good stuff. But you've got to have an evolving, you've got to know what your landscape is, know where your gaps are, know where you've got to go. Hey, you know what? We don't know the answer to that. Let's go and speak to some customers. Let's go and do some research. Let's go and spend some time doing some market analysis over here. We need to answer these questions. You don't know what questions you need to answer unless you get in a room and you do, and this is why I'm from the school of, when I started learning about lean canvases and business model canvases, and I'm like, this is the way, because now we've got a way of all getting in a room and seeing the whole picture, and then actually literally deferring options as we go, because we're seeing them in front of our eyes. And we go, oh, okay, well, let's let's park that custom segment for now. Let's not worry about them for now. If you don't do that, if you don't have that conversation, everything's in scope. Everything is in scope, and every customer, every job, every channel, mobile, desktop, Android, every version of Android,
all at the same time.
Scope, unless you explicitly make it out of scope. And because there's such a massive landscape out there, it's impossible to do that. And this is why mapping and slicing are, for me, I did a talk once. I started my talk, I said, what's the most important Agile practice? People were going, retrospectives. I go, no, incorrect. They're saying all these, and I said, it's slicing. Because if we don't slice, we're not narrowing our scope. Therefore, we've got no chance of doing anything meaningful in a 2-week sprint. No chance whatsoever if we haven't narrowed our scope down by slicing. So,
yeah. Do you know, as you're talking, what was coming to my mind, was coming clear to me is Agile is pretty lean. And I think over the years, we've packed on pounds. You look at it that we spend time, because when you look at it truly, some of these practices are being done because we think they should be done. And they're add-ons to the main thing, but we spend so much time fulfilling the tick box of these add-ons. And then when we are then tired of them, then we then go to face the work. Because something I said that is really powerful, that in organizations that I've worked with, I've realized one thing: value proposition, blurry.
Yeah.
Backlog of items, very clear.
Yes.
In an organization I walked in once, the backlog was about, I think they had items that have been there for like a year and a half.
Yep. Oh yeah, very common.
2 years. So I told my owner, do you know what? Anything older than 6 months, delete. And let's see who comes back. No one.
Yeah.
That means it wasn't urgent, you know? So, but in their mind, that's agility, right?
Yes.
Give them a feature list of things to do. The reason behind it, no one knows. I was once at the planning meeting, and I made it clear to them that they have to say the reason behind it. And something really powerful happened. We had a stakeholder that had to come and tell us the reason and explain some things to us. And a member of the team told him point blank, that thing is worthless. And the guy was like, what do you mean? And he said, it's going to cost this amount of money and time, and your return on investment is this little. Do you still want to do this? And at that point, I realized that's a really powerful conversation, because it's not just do stuff. We can do anything, but is it the right thing to do? Is it the valuable thing to do? What's the value proposition? Does it make sense? Has it been validated? And what I'm hearing you say right now, in all that you're saying, is actually, if you strip it down to its basics, it works. If we take all this fluff out, it works. It actually does work. Then what we need to do in the industry now, more than ever, is to focus on the main thread of things. What's the value proposition? Who do we need to get it done? How do we get it done? How can we get it done to a point where it's effective, efficient, and reliable? And let's keep rinsing and repeating that.
Yes, but I will add one caveat to that, though, is that the word "it" is very small, but very dangerous. You know, we talk about it a lot. It's like, when will it be done? This underneath this "it" is a whole world of assumptions and things we haven't even thought of, that we think we've defined the scope. Oh, we haven't. We have not defined the scope. No chance, right? So this, and I've seen this, I've seen this play out where it's like, should we do this project? Oh, and then an estimation session's done. It's like, the estimate's too big. Let's ditch the project. And then I'm like, but hang on a minute. When we look at actually the things, the top 5 or 6 things in this project is hugely valuable to people, and you're saying we shouldn't do the whole project because of the whole project. So there's these what I call clumps of value in things that we call the "it." Regardless of whether you call it a project or initiative or whatever, it's like, so we actually have to spend the time exploring the "it," and by that I don't mean that we define a solution as the "it." I mean the "it" in terms of the capability. So the customer segment, the channel, the job that we're going to solve, all of that kind of stuff. We need to be more explicit and precise about the "it," and you can actually do that quite quickly and efficiently using mapping techniques.
Mm-hmm.
It's multi-dimensional, so you can very quickly, especially with a small group. I run workshops. A group of 5 or 6 of us. You give them 20 minutes, and we've got like a really expansive and comprehensive map of a domain, and that's just in 20 minutes. And it's like, and then you can go away and ask other stakeholders to add more detail. Yeah. And then you go, okay, here's our option space. Now, where are we going to focus in and where are we going to defer? And we put a ring fence around it. That exercise, which again, so even if teams spend a couple of hours doing that, it can save months of development, even years,
millions,
potentially thousands or even millions of dollars, depending on the situation. So that so all of that cyclical agile stuff and everything else, which we always talk about, great, absolutely. But it's like, I think also people need to hear it's that you need to go and use these kind of practices. You need to use these mapping techniques and go and explore impact mapping and story mapping and story slicing, and really understand and use those, like not just when you're deciding what you're implementing, but at the capability problem level, the problem opportunity space. I call it capability slicing. Other people call it, I think Ant Murphy calls it opportunity slicing. There's Teresa Torres has opportunity solution trees. There's all these different techniques, but basically you're mapping out your landscape. Yeah. And not diving into, okay, here's the thing. All right, what's the solution? And we jump straight into, and even of course, like even at the solution and implementation level, the landscape is huge as well, and that's why we have to slice at those levels as well. Yeah. Functional design, the workflows, everything else. It's a minefield of scope, and we always get surprised when things blow out. When we go, oh yeah, we can do that in a month, and when it blows out, and we're always surprised. Well, it's like, and I'll be the one that's sitting there in the initial meeting going, and when people saying it's going to be a month, I'm saying this is going to take 18 months, and everyone's going, oh, listen to Mr. Negative. It's like, forget the doubling it and adding a buffer. Let's multiply it by 20. Like, forget about that, because it expands.
Yeah.
And the reason it expands is because we learn more and we start to explore. Because we get into more detail, then suddenly those slices are starting to naturally come out because we're looking at the detail. So we're having to get more explicit about what we're doing. And then we go, oh no, I didn't think of that. It's like, well, of course we didn't, because we didn't take the time to map it out. What I'd also urge, again, people to come away from this is like, little heuristics I use, I suppose, little thinking models around how you can apply this kind of thinking. One is, rather than asking, will this fit? So like, how long will this take? Will this thing fit in this time frame? Instead, think, how do we make it fit? So instead, let's start with a constraint. How much money have we got? How much time have we got? Now we know that, okay? And this is the objective we want to accomplish. Okay. What is feasible for us to do that?
Yeah.
And then, and in order to do that, we need to slice, because we need to start narrowing down and go, well, if we only had 6 weeks for this, what would we do? And we'd have to leave that out. We'd leave that out. We wouldn't do that. We'd make this more basic. We'd, blah, blah, blah. So that mindset is absolutely key, not just for NoEstimates, for working in a more agile, value-driven way.
Yeah.
For your forecast, if someone needs a forecast, just use yesterday's weather with variance. Really, just look it up. Loads of stuff about this. Yeah. Just count your stories and add a couple of standard deviations on both sides. But Bob's your uncle. There, you've got a release burn up with a confidence level. You can adjust your course as you go. If you need to do that, you can do that. And the other thing I like to talk about is that user stories, which agile teams typically use as their sort of their work item, if you like. What I want to remind people of is that a user story isn't a work item. A user story isn't work. We make it work. We make it become work because we go, we're implementing this user story, so therefore it's a work item. But actually, a user story is what it is. It's actually what a user would be saying to us. It's them telling us a story of something they're trying to accomplish. It's a job that they're trying to accomplish in their life, in their whether it be in their work, in their domain, whatever. They're trying to accomplish something, and we're going to build software that enables them to accomplish that job.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the story. Now, if we go with that thinking, a user story doesn't have a size. A user story doesn't have a size. When we start talking about size of a story, by default, we're now talking about implementation. We're saying, if we were to implement this story, what size is it? Well, straight away, we've made an error there because we haven't explored how we can actually be more specific about that story in terms of which customer can we deliver to first? Is there a particular, a single customer we can deliver to? Is there can we get more specific about this job? If we're asking, for example, about a reporting system, well, let's dive down into what it actually is they're trying to report on and pick the most important thing that they're trying to actually understand and start with that. If we haven't gone down that process, the scope can be limitless underneath a story.
Yeah.
So you could say the size of a story is as big as you want it to be, or it's as small as you want it to be. Like if you say to me, oh, here is a user story. If you say to me, we have 6 weeks to deliver something, that's a very different question to you have 1 week to deliver something, which is a very different question to you have 2 years to deliver something. And I could fill that time with that one story.
Yeah.
Like, because if it's a genuine story, if it's, and this is where, we say, oh no, but a story is just a small bit of work we do in our sprints. It's just like a piece of functionality in our product. Well, no, that isn't a user story. That's that's one part of a functional workflow, or like it's part of enabling the capability in your product, but it's not the story itself. So those kind of stories have a size because they're an implementation detail. But even there, we could say, well, how long do I want to spend on this? I could spend weeks and weeks building, for example, for an emailing customers feature, I could spend weeks and weeks doing like a MailChimp integration, or I could spend a few days doing a simple kind of manual solution that works and does the job. So there's no size to a story. And again, if that challenges your thinking, anyone out there, like, great, go and explore what that means and go and think about that, because it's only when you start thinking about that and realizing that actually all of this stuff starts to click into place. It's like a user story should be an option. It's a deferred conversation. It's a option for something that we might want to talk about and do something with. It's not a work item that we are doing right now in our sprint. The things that we do in our sprint should actually be slices of stories, not actual, because an actual story, if it's a genuinely valuable story, often won't be able to be done in a sprint. A genuine story, sometimes we have to split it up over like maybe 3 or 4 sprints. And again, this would be heresy to some Scrum Master. They'll be like, no, we need to deliver value in every single sprint. Like, well, yes, absolutely, we need to deliver value in every single sprint. But this is why slicing is needed rather than breaking things up into components. And this is why you need slicing at all levels. You need capability slicing, functional slicing, and technical slicing. You need to do all of those 3 levels in order to make sure that you're delivering value in each. But delivering value doesn't mean that we're going to be able to build a solution that we can release to customers after a sprint. It just doesn't work that way. Like, maybe sometimes we will be able to, but it's certainly not like, so it doesn't matter how much you slice something, like, but the point is we shouldn't break it down into components. We should be, so if, for example, the story is about enabling someone to purchase something on your website, the outcome of the first sprint should actually be a basic version of enabling someone to purchase something on your website. Not, we've done the login bit, or we've done exactly. So that's the key to being able to make sure that because it's valuable at that point, because you are able to garner
feedback
on the design, on whether it's useful, if you can get users involved, on whether you're going down the right path, all that kind of stuff. So it's valuable from that perspective. It's not necessarily bringing value to the organization at that point until you release it. But often people, again, get very tangled up in that. They go, oh, I thought, but I thought we were supposed to release every sprint, and we can't do that. And because we're only releasing every 3 sprints at the moment, like we're doing something wrong. And it's like, well, no, you're not. It's like it's okay. It's great that you might have a goal that you can release more frequently, but you know what? Sometimes the customer can't consume that.
Yes.
Sometimes the customer wants a monthly release, and this is where people get confused with deployment and release. Deploying and releasing. Deploying, the technical endeavor of putting our product on a server somewhere that is accessible, versus releasing, which is exposing that to the outside world, to customers. Those are 2 different things. But we get confused, and we say, oh, but continuous deployment, we can't do that because our customers only want they don't want things to be update every day. It's like, well, already we're confusing terminology. So
the update is available, but there's a time that we can schedule it to be released to the customer, but we can keep on pushing to that back-end functionalities. Like you rightly said, it's like your iPhone or Android. Yeah, the iOS 18 is already in the works. It gets a particular day where they say, oh, beta release, and then between that and September, they're doing updates. But then they're going to push it to Neil and say, here you go. It's going to be like, no, we're still working on it. Updating that.
Exactly right.
And then a certain day they go, there you go.
And your viewers and listeners might be going, well, we've moved completely off the topic of estimates and no estimates. But honestly, I think this is actually the essence of it all. It's because actually, when you're in an environment where you are doing all this good stuff and you are continuously delivering, like you're releasing as soon as you possibly can to the customer, and you're releasing value. And in the meantime, you're getting feedback and you're building a working product in the meantime. When you're doing those things, estimates become irrelevant. Do you know what? It's amazing. People stop asking you when stuff can be done because they see it. They're actually, Ron Jeffries calls it show me the software, right? He talks about building running tested features. It's like, show me the software. That is my validation that we are progressing towards something meaningful and valuable. And if I'm not seeing the software progress, there is risk. I'm worried. What's going on? And this is where we want the accountability on team. We don't want to put accountability on teams for delivering to their estimates. It's like, the team said it'd be 3 months. I'm holding them to deliver this thing in 3 months. No. What you should be holding them to is to deliver a working product,
valuable product,
on a continuous basis. I want to see that thing evolve and moving towards where it should be. Because now I'm as an executive or a senior manager, I'm now feeling confident that we are progressing in the right direction. And when you tell me that you're getting customers involved, you're talking, we're shaping this thing in the right direction, I'm now feeling very comfortable that my team is delivering value. I'm paying my team, they are delivering value to my company, they are managing risk, they're testing their ideas, that they get it. That is what the accountability on teams should be, not the fear-driven, estimate-driven stuff. And this is this is the thing, is that I go into these environments that are supposedly agile environments, and there's no accountability on the teams. Like it's like, we're agile, so we don't even worry about estimates. We just cruise along,
just do it.
We deliver whenever, and it's like, oh no, you get that right. You're chill. You're an agile guy. No estimates. I'm like, oh my god, no. And in fact, I talked. Back then, people could look it up. I wrote a blog about prerequisites if you want to work in a no estimates environment, if such a thing exists. What are the prerequisites? And there's a whole bunch of them, and most companies wouldn't be doing any of them, let alone all of them. If you want to just dispense with estimates, well, you better make damn sure you're doing all of these things. And one of them is actually having constraints and showing progress and getting feedback from your stakeholders and all that kind of stuff. If you're not doing that stuff, no. Of course, I'm going to be asking you for estimates. If I'm not seeing any progress, of course I'm going to be going, oh, hey, when are you going to be done? Where are you at? Right? And you can't just, if you keep saying to me, oh we'll be done. It's like, really? Like, like, you know what? Then I'll go and ask someone else, and they'll go, "Oh no, we're never going to make it." You know, and it's like, so you know what? Let's all come together and let's be transparent and let's all support each other and try and deliver the most valuable things together. You know, that's a healthy way to do things.
Yeah.
And that's what for me, no estimates is about. It's not about ditching estimates. It's not about any of that. It's about, if we are doing some kind of estimate, let's think about, should we be doing it in this context? And if we are, let's make sure we avoid the dysfunctions. Let's make sure we call out our assumptions when making an estimate. Let's make sure we incorporate uncertainty into it if we are doing estimates. But again, let's not put too much emphasis on that. Let's put more emphasis, way more emphasis on empirical product development. Let's use these great tools that are out there from the world of lean startup and product management, all these amazing free tools and templates that are out there, which puts consultants like me out of business because there's everyone creating all this free stuff. But it's wonderful. I mean, for a practitioner, oh my gosh, there's just so much stuff out there. You know, all these canvases and that start the conversation, all these templates, and they're incredible. They are incredibly valuable, and they're so much more valuable than getting better at estimating. Fix your predictability if that's a problem in your organization. With the methods I've described, and then start doing this other stuff and add that on, and all of the other problems start over time will fade away because you're putting an emphasis on value creation, which is
the
what
real
it's all
things. Yeah. Oh wow. This has been awesome. You know, as you're talking, I just realized something. And I told someone before, but you brought it out again in my head, which is if you're delivering value regularly, get less questions. When people start asking, when will it be done? What's the estimate? It's because they're not seeing anything. So
the questions will be about the product rather than exactly. Yeah.
So it's a roundabout way of telling you we're not seeing what we're meant to be seeing. So we're going to keep asking for every other thing. But if at every sprint review, I'm showing you progress towards the product goal or the objective, you don't need to ask any questions. If we don't, you can come in there and discuss.
And this is the thing. If we don't, I've worked with teams and they've had a bad sprint. Things have happened. There's been production incidents and everything's gone wrong. And you know what? We've made no progress. Oh my God, Neil, should we cancel the sprint review? And it's like, I get it. And this is what most teams do. They cancel the sprint review. They go, we've got nothing to show. But sprint review is about us coming together as a collaborative team and saying, what is our honest view of our progress? Let's inspect and adapt. If we've made no progress, we need to talk about that. It's hard, but it actually builds trust, because we say, you know what, like, we come together, we haven't actually made any progress in this sprint. You know what happened? We had these production incidents, blah 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 blah. And again, in a healthy environment, we can start talking about, well, you know what can I do as a manager? Maybe you got a bunch of ad hoc requests in this sprint. What can I do as a manager to reduce that next time? And I've actually seen that happen in organizations where I've coached. Right at the beginning, the first sprint review was so toxic. Managers were going, "Why haven't you completed? You said you were going to do this. Why haven't you done this?" And by the end of my engagement, the manager was, the team was saying, "Oh, we had all these ad hoc requests. This is why we weren't able to complete all our sprint items." It's like, okay. Can you show me what all those requests were and tell me who they came from, so I can go and have a chat with them and see if we can reduce this. This is what we should be talking about. This is what product development for adults is. It's not about hiding things in fear of like, oh my God, we didn't, we've got nothing to show, and so we're embarrassed. And so, well, yes, if it's just a demo, it will be embarrassing because you're going to invite all these people along. You just show them like the buttons change pink, or it's like, people are like, what the hell is this, right? So if right from the start you say, look, the reason we're coming together is that we're all stakeholders in this project. We all have a stake in this being successful. Yeah. So we're gonna honestly assess progress, and we're gonna get feedback, and we're gonna decide what's the best way to use our time going forward, and that's going to be the purpose of this review. Part of that will be showing the product as it evolves. It'll also be talking about what customers are saying where possible, and in talking about all that stuff surrounding it. But it's really an honest assessment, a review, monitoring progress toward our goal, as Scrum puts it. Absolutely essential in an empirical environment, so ditching estimates isn't the point. If you're spending weeks putting together an estimate, then yes, you probably need to have a think about, how do we look? Is that actually because
an effective use of time? Yeah.
Well, does that mean that we're taking on too much? Like often that would be a symptom of we're trying to do too big a project. And actually we're better off slicing into 2 projects so that we don't have to have this, there's not so much value at risk, and there's not so much in scope. So let's not just say, well, this has to be one project. Let's slice it into 2, even if it's officially one project, in terms of the organization.
Yeah.
Slice it into 2 and do them sequentially, right? It's like you don't need to work within that sort of, but again, it needs people thinking about this stuff and doing it. So that's what I advocate for, is more critical thinking in software development outside of the developers. If you just feed developers and treat them like children and ask them to commit to estimates, what you'll get back is just a developer just doing what they're told and not inputting their vastly big brains and amazing input that they can give. As being a programmer myself, I had all this to give, and I was able to give that early in my career. And I found later on, one of the reasons I got out of development, I found that I was ending up being that guy in a corner with no say in what's going on. And I was like, how did I end up here? I used to be working directly with big customers and building awesome stuff for them. And now I'm sitting in a corner being told what to do and how to code and everything. It's like, so I think there was this part of it was like, I want to go and fix this dysfunction and start to work in positions of influence that I can do that. So, that for me is what it's all about. If people want to know more about NoEstimates and the other side, go and read Woody's Yule. He has let's say, completely different perspective. Vasco, very different perspective. Alan Holub, he has a viral video where he basically says, we need to stop estimating now. Look, this is the thing. Sometimes you have to take an extreme position to really think things through. And I think that's what the value of that NoEstimates conversation was. There was some dissenters. I think people like Alistair Coburn actually was very, very disparaging about it. He calls it a hoax. If you ever speak to Alistair Coburn and get him on the show, he'll call it a hoax, right? And it's like, I always challenge him on this. So, what do you mean it's a hoax? Like, and the thing is, I'd always take the time to go back and have the nuanced conversations, whereas some other people took some more. I'm going to staunchly defend this position. And again, when you're getting paid to defend that position, it makes it harder to not do so. If you write a book about something, you're going to be defending the thing in that book. So, and you run workshops, you're going to defend the thing in that workshop. So I get it. And there's nothing, by the way, I contributed to that book. In no way is that a criticism. It's a choice. I could have gone down. I didn't not do it because I'm some moral thing. It's just not me. It's just like I'm more of a, I like to see different sides of things and piece it together and be totally wrong about something and then figure out, actually, and then learn. And then, I'm more that person. So
truly agile. That's the truth. It's rapid feedback. I mean, I wrote here, what's agile? I put here a series of feedback mechanisms coupled with an adaptable value creation system, right? It's all about getting out there, getting feedback, examining the feedback. I mean, the plan, do, check, adjust. You do something, you look at it, then you adjust. So every stance is a stance that we take with the idea of, I'm taking this stance with what I know today, with the best intentions, and that stance can change tomorrow once I get new information. That's it. It's our ability
exactly
to
right.
adapt,
Exactly right. Adapt, but with the again, just to close, just with the acknowledgement that we are spending someone else's money.
Yeah.
When you are spending your own money, it's a very different proposition, and this is why you're very, very invested in are we doing the right things? The further detached you are from that, the harder, you don't really have the skin in the game, and that's where it gets really hard. It gets hard for everyone. It's hard for the person at the top who wants to know, Neil, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what the teams are doing, what they're, and you find out what the teams are doing is nothing like what the execs want them to be working on. There's this massive disconnect. So it's hard for them at the top, and then it's hard for the developers. They're like, just tell us what you want, what we're trying to achieve. Constantly changing our mind. We're constantly. It's like, that's not agile. Agile, from a development perspective, for me, agile development is about flexibility, but with strategic clarity.
Yeah,
it's like I want to have It's like the dog walking a dog on the beach. And the dog is veering left and right on its lead, but you're going in the direction, you're walking in a particular direction.
Yeah. And
you can veer off and adapt. And however long your lead is, depends on how much you can veer and adapt. But you are going in a direction, you know what you're trying to accomplish, and you have constraints around that. And you need to have those. And most companies don't have them. And this is where the agile then breaks down, and the people paying for the consultants and the coaches and everything else, they lose faith in it because these constraints don't exist, and the coaches that are there aren't making sure that they are. They're not putting their commercial hat on, and they're just they're more adversarial with the execs, whereas the execs don't get it, rather than actually I need to work with the execs to make sure that we are creating commercial outcomes, because that's what makes me valuable as a coach. So yes, but everything you said, absolutely, but I just want everyone to appreciate and start thinking more about the commercial outcomes, and then it then starts to make more sense when you start looking at things like business value canvases and capability slicing and stuff like this, because it's like I need to attach the daily a task that someone's doing, attach it and make it traceable all the way up to how that's going to create value for a customer and how it's going to create value for the business. And if everyone on the team can answer the question, what is this? What value is this going to give the customer, and what value is going to give the business? If all of your team can answer that question, then you're doing a pretty good job as a coach. But the most likely scenario is that none of them will be able to answer the question, or everyone will have a different answer.
Yeah.
So that's the job of the coach, not to implement agile, not to make planning meetings shorter, or to make daily stand-ups more focused. All of that stuff is not the point.
Not the main thing. Yeah,
it's the other stuff.
Oh wow.
Anyway,
thanks.
Cheers. I've been sipping on wine. This is why I put him on a rant fest.
No, but thanks. I mean, your thoughts are so, and I see. Oh man, thank you so very much. Because I know what you're talking about, and the context of the conversation ties into the idea behind this podcast, which is get people that have done this before to get you to see the picture, the landscape.
Yeah.
A lot of people are focused on the trees. They need to see the forest properly.
Yes. Be able to zoom out, and then when you zoom in on the branch, you know where the branch is, and you feel comfortable in there, and you know when to stop, and you know when to stop adding things to that branch. Because you're like, hang on a minute, let's zoom out again. And this is why maps are great artifacts actually for review meetings and stuff like that. It's because you can actually go, okay, this is what we delivered in this sprint. Let's zoom out. And not just look at the product, but let's look at the landscape. Let's look at the capability landscape. And hey, so this is where we're focusing right now. This is where we think we're going to be going next. But you know what? Let's see how this thing goes. There might be more value to be added here. Blah, 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 blah. Start having these really, really powerful conversations with your stakeholders. Everyone gets engaged in that. Everyone is listening. Everyone's engaged. Versus, so there's still 733 story points to deliver in this project. Our current velocity means that we're going to, it's like, oh my God, right. Just kill me now. Like, seriously, it's like.
I know. I'd be amazed about one thing. This problem is so prevalent, I'm telling you.
Yeah, oh gosh. Oh, it's everywhere. Everywhere. And then this is why, I do, whilst it's a very frustrating line of work to be in, and nowadays I try and focus more on product management and being in the product and doing, rather than in the environment stuff, more the agile coaching stuff. I try and do that, although I do still get asked to do more of the broader coaching stuff, because I just get it's frustrating, but it is also satisfying when you do get those little wins.
It turns around.
It does feel satisfying. It tends to be months or even years afterwards, though. I'll get messages from people who years ago weren't listening to anything I was saying. They go, "Oh, Neil, that thing you said. Oh yeah, we started doing that like 3 years later, and it was brilliant." And it's like, oh, I'll take that. I'll take that as a win.
Oh wow! So yeah, I know what you mean, but thank you so very much. Thank you.
No worries. No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for asking me.
No, it was my pleasure. As in when you said yes, even my wife heard it because I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, sorry. No, just
well, you know what? I've actually been turning these kind of things down for the last few years because I don't know. I just felt like I haven't really had anything new to say. But I've noticed this estimation conversation coming up again. Like I say, it's the 10-year cycle.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know what? I saw that you've got this new podcast, and it's really, really nice. And
thank you.
You know what? Why not? I'm gonna have a glass of wine and just see what comes out of my mouth. And
so thank you very much.
So all the best with it. I hope it's really successful, man. I hope it's really.
Thank you. So, and that concludes our riveting discussion with Neil, right? And we've talked a lot about the NoEstimates and the idea behind it, and also the mentality that as an Agile coach, Scrum Master, you must have regarding estimation, regarding the practices, and also most importantly, regarding value delivery. So what am I saying? Don't forget to subscribe to the Agile Matrix podcast to stay updated to future episodes, packed with these engaging topics, expert insights, simulating conversations with thought leaders, people that have actually put these things to work. So like we said earlier, so you can actually see the woods, see the trees, see the whole landscape, and understand how to deploy agility where you are. So what are we saying? So join us as we explore the ever-evolving landscape of agile development, uncovering new perspectives and empowering you to revolutionize your approach to project management and service delivery. So until then, keep innovating, keep iterating, and keep embracing the agile mindset. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you very much.